Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our regularly scheduled workshop, August 4th, 2022. It's currently 3 p.m. Do we have any public comments? Very good. We will hear from Mr. Marty Janczak.
Well, I'm here to report to the council that 2 weeks ago Friday, I believe it was the 22nd, TABA had their second annual golf tournament at Salmons. And contrary to any rumors, there were no law enforcement calls. Everybody had a great time. The food was great. The staff did wonderful. And if you have us, we'll come back with the, excuse me, we'll come back again.
Very good. Thank you.
Just wanted you to know that.
Yeah, congratulations. Then moving on. We'll move on to item 2, which is to discuss as may be needed any regular meeting agenda items. Is there anything anybody wants to speak about now or possibly pull for further discussion during the meeting?
I think we wanted to have a little bit of conversation about item M on the consent agenda.
Okay.
And there was quite a bit of discussion about this item at our last meeting. And when Councilmember Long and I met earlier this week, we wanted to have a little bit more conversation and workshop before we got to the point of voting on it in regular meeting. So this is the
What are you doing?
I'm not sure.
I'm getting this out of your way.
This is the proposed development off of 9 and 3. I'm just gonna skip to the condition slide, which we've made some updates to clarify, hopefully clarify how the process would work. So would require a traffic impact analysis to be completed. And then a site plan would have to be submitted for review and approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. And that site plan must incorporate any improvements recommended by the traffic impact analysis for that particular phase. We would recommend a condition that no more than 150 dwelling units or equivalent are allowed until a second point of ingress and egress is constructed. And if at any time more than 150 dwelling units are proposed, then an updated traffic impact analysis and an updated site plan must be reviewed and approved by P&Z and the City Council and must incorporate any improvements that are recommended by that updated TIA. And just as a reminder, no more than 150 dwelling units may be constructed without a second point of ingress and egress based on fire code. So this property does have a proposed collector that could eventually be constructed, but there are some challenges to that. There are multiple property owners that would need to be coordinated with, including property owned by the United States government. So that I believe was Councilmember Long's main concern. And so I wanted to just bring this back for some discussion before we head into the regular meeting.
Okay. And Bren, if I could add,
Absolutely.
the developer, Mike Wilson, representing WB, is here as well. So
Thank you.
questions for him.
Councilmember Long,
I'm sorry.
do you have anything to add to any of that?
Yeah, oh, Brent, stop right there if you could. My only concern, and again, it's Wilson, right?
Yes, ma'am.
My concern again, as I expressed last time, is traffic flow into 93. And item number 3 on this says, until a second point of ingress and egress is constructed. I'm concerned that that second point will turn out to be on 93. So, you know, I certainly don't have the authority or the right to say second point of ingress and egress off of 93, but that's my concern.
Where's the first one?
On 93,
I'd like to show us where
Yeah, see that.
there's only one.
they are. Where it is.
Yeah.
Like remind me. Spoke to the text doc yet?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
One entrance or two on 93 would they allow?
Two, they were allowed to.
So TxDOT, in preliminary discussions, TxDOT would allow two on 93. And what you're talking about is a concern that that would just push traffic onto the same thoroughfare.
Exactly, but TxDOT will allow 2 on 93 for 150 units. What will they allow 2 on 93 for 400?
Well, the TIA, which we're obligated to do through TxDOT, will determine a lot of the maneuverings onto 93. TIA will address density issues. And we'll get into,
Density, you said?
yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Yeah, it will take into account, what can the property handle on 93, which we would address with the TxDOT improvements if there are any required.
So specifically, TxDOT will be asked to look at your, I presume, proposal of 400.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
that's fine, as long as we have an answer. Obviously, if TxDOT says 400 are acceptable to 93, I suppose we have no choice but to accept 400. But that's my concern.
Right, we're cognizant of the safety issues, and we fully intended, to do the studies that were necessary to justify any improvements we're doing on it.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you.
For clarification, though, you have to have a study to do the first 150, right? You're limited to 100.
Yeah, it's per code, per fire code.
So then if the new updated traffic survey says you can do a second survey, a second entry, are you putting in another 150? Or are you putting in 250?
No, we're limited to,
300 total in the whole
Correct.
subdivision?
correct.
So there won't be 400 houses.
What happened to the 400? Am I missing?
That was our proposal when we first came in, PDSF2.
So I got lower.
And so,
Oh, right, I'm sorry.
so by fire code, they could do no more than 300 units.
Ever.
And that's with two
I
entrances
got
on
it.
93, and those are two widened entrances, basically, to allow fire truck.
Right,
If there was a bottleneck there, still allow a fire truck access through there. So it'd be two widened, and they're capped at 300.
okay,
Otherwise, they're capped at 150.
I get it.
They just had.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Well, obviously a problem. I missed 150. I missed somehow or other.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, certainly.
Mine missing.
75 for a single and it's 150 for a single.
And then if two improved, it's not necessary, where it's not 300.
What's the discuss there?
So either way, we're limited by fire code. I don't know if it's 300, but it's with two entrances. It may not even be 300, it might be less than
Okay,
two entrances. Point is, it'd be capped by.
well below the 400.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much, both Mr. Wilson and Brian and Brent and anybody else. Thank you.
And just to clarify, the TIAs can actually be for the total development,
That's correct,
with raising the total.
correct.
Well, we'll look forward to that.
Thank you. And that is, agreed upon as part of the zoning. It'll be the first thing y'all see is the TIA.
Well, again, thank you.
And that'll also include whether or not the decel lanes or turn lanes on 93, the widening for that section.
All right,
Very
Satisfied?
good. Very much. Thank you for the time.
sure. Okay, we are going to move the agenda around a little bit. We are going to skip number 2 for now. And Dr. Marbutt, we're going to go ahead and move to item 3, which is to receive a presentation from Dr. Marbutt regarding the preliminary data findings related to the homelessness and mental health strategic plan. Ms. Glover.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is Dr. Robert Marbutt. He has been hired as a consultant, as I'm sure you all remember, by the cities of Temple and Killeen to help us develop a homelessness and mental health strategic plan for the entire county. We have been working with him since late April and have done quite a bit of data research. And he's here to show you that preliminary data, the findings that he's developed from that. And we'll be back in a few months to give some more direction as to actual solution suggestions for you all to consider. But right now, he's just going to share with you some data.
So, and again, to me, it's very important that you understand your problem before you start working on the solution. So that's the theory why we're coming in. In addition to the survey, I've never interviewed more people. I've never been in more meetings ever in any community ever in 17 years of doing this as I've done with here, just interviewing people. We did focus groups at the beginning and we've been meeting, and we even had our last meeting, I think yesterday, as a citizen who called up and said, I want to come and meet y'all. And so we've been meeting with everybody. So a lot of this is being driven by data, and a lot of it's being driven by the interviews. So just jump right in here. Where should I be pointing? Oh, there we go. This is a quick reminder. I call this the city manager slide because it's very expensive homelessness in a lot of different ways. And so if you're more of the advocate person experiencing homeless, the human tragedy of the person experiencing homeless, plus also the family that's connected. At the government level, you have jail, you have police, you got sheriff, you have court system and hospital system. That's at the government. At nonprofits, you have a lot of nonprofits like Catholic Charities does a lot of different things. So if the homelessness piece is taking more money, they have less to do in their other areas. And these two have become much more important in the last 10 years or so. Some of this is NIMBYism, some of this is perceived, some of this is real, but it really is starting to affect economic development. It's starting to affect tourism districts. And so overall, it's very expensive. And the other is most communities don't realize how much they're already spending on homeless, whether it's a direct outlay, whether it's 20% of your service calls and such, you're already spending that. Here are the 5 things that I'm measuring success by. And it also reinforces as you go through with what you're going to look at, you got to sort of, focus on your end goals, but you want big improvement. If you're doing this, you want big improvement. You don't want to just move it a little bit. You want to move the ball big if you're going big. So you want to significantly decrease your street level homelessness. And this is important. A lot of people just sort of focus on the visibility here, but it's your street level that's jumping your calls for service, with your officers, your EMS calls, your overloading of the emergency room and your court system. And that then drives the overcrowding of the jail. And that also drives the misuse and overuse. And there's a little difference of what that's happening in the ER. And we're going to talk a lot about number 5 here in a second, but the only way to get reduction is you have to start getting more people out of homeless than you have coming into homeless. And an average community in America has about 8% new people coming into homeless every year. And no matter what you do, you're going to have new people. Next year, they're going to be people, we don't even know who. Some of that's domestic violence. Some of that comes out of hood. Some of that comes out of untreated mental illness. Some of it is economic driven, but you're always going to have new people coming in. So if you're not getting people to graduate and you're not reducing your inbound rate, you're just going to keep going. And you're basically at a rate you're doubling about every 4 years. And when you look at the statistical survey we have, Your next doubling will probably happen in about 3.8 years. And the next double after that is going to be a little less than that. It's sort of logarithmic. You're on a logarithmic movement now. So basically in 7 years, you're going to quadruple ballpark and size of your community homeless if you don't make a change. That's just where your math is going. I want to focus on, these are some of the major things that we're talking about. Peter Drucker, I think, is just great. It's a management approach. You know, a lot of people always think of him as sort of the business guy, but his last 7 books were about what governments can learn from systems and what nonprofits can learn from systems. And so, you know, and I fortunately went to the Claremont colleges where he taught, and he always used to beat this in. You got to know your exact problem before you start fixing it. And Nancy's been with me in many of the meetings, and I'd say well over half the people we met with, I asked them, what do you think the problem is? Or what do you think the patterns are? And people jumped right to the solution. You know, and that's well over half our interviews. And so I finally started saying, we don't want no solution. We want, you know, listen to the question. What is the pattern? What is the problem? So you got to really know that. You got to address the root causes. If you don't do root causes and you just do the superficial stuff, your numbers are going to keep increasing. If you want big change, you got to make big change. And then we got to improve the service delivery. This is really critical. You're going to see that on the data. On this side of the county, on the Temple side, the service delivery system has some dramatic improvements that I call it the G Street problem. You got to really look at that. And as a culture of the community, you need to move from enabling. You have a lot of very nice, well-intended people who are exacerbating your homelessness because what they're doing is not using the brain and heart at the same time. You got to have your heart, you got to have your brain, but you got to be doing them together. And you absolutely don't want to become Austin. And right now, you have the same problem San Marcos and the Braunfels has. Everybody around Austin now, the Austin problem is just bleeding out. And we see that in the data. So here are research questions, a lot, and we even have more than this, but the top 2 are the real important one. What is your homegrown number versus your out of town? That is a huge issue, especially anybody on I-35. How many people are coming here and you just welcome them and convert them into an in-towner? When I went out my first 2 days, I went out like acting like a person dressed as a homeless person and went out. And both in Clean and on G Street, when I went into the agencies and was watching how the intake was going, they both happened to have an out-of-town person coming in. And it's like, well, welcome, welcome Temple, welcome to Clean. I can get you a sleeping bag. I can't get you a tent right away. Come back in 3 or 4 days. I'll get you a tent. Here's a sheet of paper of everywhere you can go to get food and services and such. You can't keep converting out-of-towners to in-towners. That's just nuts. You already have a problem. And if you think you will quadruple in around 7 to 10 years, if you don't turn that around. And it's not an inhumane thing. What we know at a clinical level, you have a higher chance of recovery when you go home, wherever home is, wherever your system is, your family is, you have a significantly higher chance of recovery of being there. Domestic violence is not. Everything I'm saying, if it's a domestic violence person sitting back home, that could be a death sentence. So I'm not talking about domestic violence, but everybody else, your best chance of recovery is not here if you're from somewhere else. So we shouldn't be welcoming here and telling you how to survive here and help you survive. We should be doing everything we can to get you back home. So we need to understand what's the homegrown number and what's the out-of-towner. And the other is, how long has a person been experiencing homelessness? This is your ultimate measurement on your system. So think of G Street as a system. And I get it's not really a system, it's more like a network, but it is the only system you have. So if you have a very low average number, that means G Street's working. If you have a very high number, people have been experiencing homeless a long time here, that means G Street is not working. And so that's your most important, this is sort of your report card to the agencies as a system, not one, they work together. and they integrate and so. And then the other thing is we're really interested in data that differs between East and West and such. Now, before we start going into the negatives, I think in this type of venture, there's always a tendency to focus on the negatives. So I want to talk about a couple of positives. Positives here, everybody likes each other here. So people really work together, but there's no system here. Most everything is done by a one-off phone call. You call a friend and that's how you get somebody moved around. Everybody here understands that mental health is a key part of this. I can't tell, most cities I go to, I spend most of my time trying to explain homeless is not a housing problem. It's a mental health, untreated mental illness with co-presenting substance abuse. That's about 80% of your problem. And so until you deal with the mental illness and the co-presenting substance that's self-medicating with that, you get that. I mean, the fact that your RFP actually put it is the only RFP, and I've been looking at RFPs for 17 years, it's the only RFP I've ever seen in the country that put mental health in the same title is homelessness. So you all get it. I can't tell you how important that is. And everybody wants to work together. Even though you don't have a system, everybody gets that. People are desireful of working together. Now, the negatives is you have no formal system. Everything is you call somebody on the phone. You call a friend. I literally was working on one issue, driving around with the police officer. He called his ex-wife, who's in the legal office over in Killeen, to work on a problem between Temple and Killeen. That's not a system, but that's how things work here. Everybody calls everybody. Guilty as charged.
We know who you're
Oh, yeah. Everybody here is like dating each other, live together. It's just amazing. But that's the network. You got a network, but it's all one off. There's not like we have an out of town person, so you know immediately what to do. Instead, it's I got Joey in front of me, I got Juan, I got Robert, I got Nancy, and now where can I place them? We've got to get to a systems level. You have a very thin record of any system success. In fact, that's probably generous. I just don't think you have system success, especially on the east side. And you got a clear volume problem. You're not compliant with Boise, Martin versus Boise. And until you become compliant with Martin versus Boise, which is the main Supreme Court case, and it went to Supreme Court, they let stand the Ninth Circuit. So that's the controlling case now. And it basically says that police, fire marshal, EMS, sheriff, you can't do much with people experiencing homeless until you have another head in a bed. So you got to have the right volume, you got to have the right capacity, and it has to be a better place. So you can't move somebody from a tent to a tent. You have to go from a tent to a bed, something like that. And so it has to be a better placement, and you have to have the right amount of volume on the placement. So let's just start getting into some of the data. Your age and average age of experienced homeless, how many people stay in one city? By the way, that was a big myth. There was a huge myth that people were moving east and west. 95% of the people don't move. They literally stay in about 2 to 3 miles of where they are. That's part of this is myth busting, finding out what is real and not. And race and ethnicity. So these were slightly lower age and average age at onset, but race, ethnicity, and movement was very comparable to other cities. Nothing really eventful to report there. Things that are big, duration of homeless, you're extremely high. And when you actually see the data, so that means your agency system is not working. That's, you got a failing grade there.
Because it's a long duration, you're saying.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So your average age, and we'll see that here in a second. And so that means it's not what you're doing, it's not working. Your gender mix was fascinating. You have many more females than the country as a whole has, generally about 20, 25%. You have just a touch over 40% female. very unusual, and that's very important when you start working solutions. We're gonna have to have different clinical tracks between out-of-towner, in-towner, male and female, vet and non-vet. So those right off the top are some of the breakouts that you see. This is a little concerning. Before experiencing homeless, you had a lower than national average of people having a job. For the same question asked you all, I think we're about 56% had a job beforehand. To give you a comparable, Laredo, which we just got the survey out of the field a couple months ago, they had an 85% had a job before experiencing homelessness. So whatever we do, we got to have workforce development in here. So as you deal with the mental health substance, we got to embed workforce development and such. So let's look at the out-of-town or hometown, because this is going to be, there are two real big takeaways. Your out-of-town, in-town, and your product. That's sort of, if you can only give me two things to talk about, that's it. So 15% were born in Bell, 24% went to high school, 41% had a job before experience, 43% had family. This is very, very low. This is very, these numbers really indicate out-of-towners. That's a major problem. And you're on I-35, totally makes sense. I get it. But how your agencies deal with that out-of-towner is the problem. And so this is a really bad indicator here. Now, this was a little bit better. This indicated here, and we spent a lot of time trying to figure out why this number is different. This 17% difference. And what we found on the clean side is there are a lot of people that came in for family, the family left, but the person who's experiencing homelessness stayed. And when we got deep into the number, this was a West County problem. You see the difference, have family currently living versus living or passed away and such. Now, let's actually get into numbers. Here are the basics: age, male, vet. This was a very big surprise here. This shows that countywide, you have about 42% female, very unusual number, with almost twice as high female than what you have for the rest of the country. So that's big. But when you look at it, we were surprised. This number, we thought at first that should be flipped, but they're actually pretty close together. And what you found out are the retired officer level is more on the Temple side, and the enlisted is more on the clean side. And that's how it broke out in some of the subtabs. But basically, not much difference. Now, the next two slides is the whole ball game. So you have a significantly higher homegrown, or in terms of clean here, but these are still really low numbers. That means 70% of your people went to high school somewhere else. That's a big, big number. Normally in a community, this is probably around 45, 55. Sometimes I've seen high as 65%.
But did they go to high school? What percentage?
Almost everybody went to high school. We had a very small group that did not or dropped out. We saw that, but it was very low. But family living in Bell, this was low on both sides, the county, but also both sides. It really wasn't much difference currently. And here's what it's really scary. You started experiencing homelessness here. So 2/3 of the people got here and were experiencing homelessness here. So Killeen has some very unique problems connected to Fort Hood that really are not bleeding on your side. And that makes sense, but you don't know how far it bleeds. You have an I-35 problem and what you do with people that come off of I-35. So this is the most scary number I've ever seen. This is San Francisco type number. This is, and I'm just being honest. I mean, my job's to tell you the honest. You're twice as high as Killeen, almost. And to give you an idea, New Braunfels is 2.9. And I think of New Braunfels as a very comparable city because they deal with the same Austin problem and you're equal distance. And so New Braunfels 2.9 is about average. That's about what you see around the country. So that means anybody you see, their average length of time to experiencing homeless is 2.9 years. You're almost triple what you see in most places. This this means what you're doing on G Street just is not working. There's nothing good in the data that says G Street's working for you. You know, the whole phenomena of that.
Is that a nice way for you to say we're enabling?
Oh, you're totally enabling. And not only are you enable, you're converting. You're taking the out of towner and converting them to an in towner, and then you enable them. And then you're so welcoming.
That's enough.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know how honest you want to be.
enough.
So now here's another little scary number on East Side. We broke it down 0 to 2 years, 2 to 5, and 5 and up. So we sort of did a little bracket to better understand why this number is different. And here's where it is. Over half your people have been experiencing homelessness for 5 years plus. That's an insane number. I mean, that just, we got to get this change. And see how Bell, they're much more balanced. This is much more what you see at a national average. And so to sum it up, on the east side, you
And
got
when you say east side, you're talking about east side of the county, just.
sort of,
Clinton.
Belton, sort of this way. Everybody comes up from I-35, you're welcome. And over time, they're here a long time. And then now it becomes, can you actually get people back and really make that change? And so I know we're not here to talk solutions, we're just trying to talk the data, but you got to have a different clinical track from your out of town and in town people. You have to treat them, and it's the right clinical thing to do. It's the right humane thing to do, because you have a higher level of success out of town. And the more out of towners you bring, the more likely they won't recover here, because that is not your natural location of recovery. That's partly why your number's high. And the other part is you welcome and enable. And so that absolutely has to change. The other is for the people 2 years and less, this sort of group here, this is where you can almost have 100% success in this group right in here. So we need to have a focus when somebody is in that 0 to 24 months, that you immediately direct intervention, we get you back to work, we get you back to the family, whatever that's work through that. We address the mental health, we address the substance abuse before it's too much has been built on it. Because this is a nearly 100% successful level here. And so you have to work on that. We got to stop the in-town people. And that's sort of the bottom line. And if you had 1/3, I'd say we need to change the culture of handing out things out the window. It's much better if people would kind of check to a well-run agency than it would be to give $1 out every day. I've met city employees who say, I give $1 out every day to my friend. It's not giving it to people experiencing homeless because they're my friend. And that's $250 a year. And any money you give out the window, that's funding alcohol, substance abuse, and prostitution. That's really what that does. Because you have plenty of food here. You have a lot of food banks, and you got a lot of feeding locations. So you said to be honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's it. Do you want to add, Nancy? Do you want to add anything for?
I think you said it all.
Okay.
Any questions for Di?
Can I ask a question? By homeless, do you mean also like couch surfers and people like that? Not just people living on the street in tents, like what we often think of?
This survey was really the street and people in an emergency shelter. So this would be what we call emergency. The couch surfing is more Department of Ed. Think of this as a HUD defined. Department of Education includes couch surfing that HUD does not. So this was a HUD survey, not a DOE survey, if that makes sense. So you're going to have more numbers on top. We're also looking at that, and we've gotten those numbers, and those are actually pretty good numbers. Your ed is not, you're not too far off of national averages on the ed.
Okay, thank you.
When you talked about I-35 being an issue and people born here and going to school here, but yet I-35 is an issue. I'm confused about how those numbers intersect.
So at the risk of way oversimplifying, you have roughly 40% of the people on the Temple side that are from here and 60% from somewhere else. That's sort of the bottom line.
Okay.
Just to really make it simple.
And do you have any, is it appropriate to even think at this point what role military demobilization in Killeen plays with people coming from Killeen here that are women that are related to the military and winding up homeless coming here? They may not have been in the military, but they were connected in some way.
We absolutely saw that countywide is 37% what you're describing, both the vet and the family, and on the Killeen side. It did not pop up on your side. It popped up on the Killeen side. Killeen has a unique problem there. They have 20% of their homeless situation is vet, a certified vet, and maybe less than honorable, but a vet serving. And they had an additional 17 percentage points of what I would call disconnected former dependents.
Okay.
So it's the 19-year-old that stayed for high school. Mom and dad got deployed and they didn't want to leave high school. It's the divorced wife or husband, spouse who is no longer has no longer benefits, but the family left and they're stuck here. And it's also the veteran who gets his or her the soldier gets their last check. They go into one of those SROs right off of the post, and they stay there until they run out of money. Then they show up at shelter. And that's 37% of your countywide number. And it's about just under 55% of the Killeen number. But it's all on the Killeen side.
All on the Killeen side.
All on the Killeen. You're not
So
seeing any of that
it's
here.
just one of the old wives' tale rumors that our homelessness in Temple is fed by people leaving Killeen.
That's just, that's a
Exactly
myth.
that. Okay.
Yeah, that's a myth.
That's very good to
Yeah.
know.
And there was a myth that people were moving people back and forth and dropping off. And there's some, but 95% don't move. And we got into real detail on that. And there is a little bit, single digit, about 5% of people that go from Killeen to the VA, get to the VA and don't get back. But that's like under 5%.
Don't get back to Killeen.
Don't get back to
Hang
Killeen.
out here.
Yeah, they go to the VA hospital, they get stuck. And there's some people that come from Killeen or the middle communities who go to one particular domestic violence facility on this side. I don't want to name it or the location for safety. They come here and then don't leave. But that's that 5%. So it happens, but it's not your biggest. If you only were dealing with that problem this life, it'd be easy.
Yeah.
But you got way bigger rocks to worry about than those small problems at this point.
Thank you.
Doctor, I have two questions. This data is fascinating.
It is.
It really is an eye opener. Do you have any sense of a census number of homeless adults? Could you extrapolate that?
Oh, yeah. And we have 418, what's that? 436 surveys done. 418 of the surveys were fully usable. And you had a deep penetration. We probably missed only about 10 or 15% that were experiencing street. This was done so well by Nancy and her counterpart in Killeen. Normally you do a representative, like a survey, like you try to get 20% sample size, make it representative. You almost interviewed everybody. And so that means your number quality is higher and your margin of error is lower. So it's great data. So if you take that a little over 400, you're probably going to be about 525 at the emergency level or on the street for the county.
That's countywide.
Countywide, yes.
For a while, wasn't Keep Temple Beautiful was doing a homelessness count? Who was doing that?
That was, I think you're thinking of the litter survey. It's the
Coalition.
Coalition.
Yeah, it seems like that number just for Temple was like around 400.
Yeah. But they're also doing the couch, they're doing a much broader number. I was asked to really focus on the emergency and street, because that's where your EMS calls comes, your fire calls, the citizen complaints and such. So that's the difference. So you're probably about 525, 550 at that emergency and street. And you're slightly more than 50% of that.
So what is the next step in this process?
We start developing solutions next. That's our next, and Dr. Marbut uses the term building blocks. So really looking at the data, breaking it down into specific segments of the population that fall within these different ranges of chronicness, and then developing solutions for each one of those different paths of clinical tracks for each one.
So in about 90 days, I will come back to you all somewhere in that time frame, and I'll have suggested clinical tracks. I'll have building blocks, and you got a lot of building blocks you already have going, which is normally most cities don't have, like Syntex here, that used to be a state-driven agency on substance use. They've now totally converting to a local agency. That's an opportunity. That's a building block. Never had that before. So, and they're going to have bed space and such. You've never had that before. So you're going to have about 30 to 40 beds at any one time countywide that you've never had. So that's a building block. And then we'll talk about the gaps. So you'll have clinical tracks, existing building blocks, and then recommended gap fills. And I will tell you up front, just so you're aware of it, you don't have enough space right now for the people that you have to take. So you're never going to become compliant to Boise, and if you're not compliant to Boise, you'll never solve the problem. And so you're going to have to get some volume fixed, but likewise, you're going to have to change how the agencies work, and you have to change the culture of the community. If you just build brand new and don't change how agencies work and how the community works, you will have the Kevin Costner build it and they'll come. The other recommendation that I've already made this to the agencies, is you absolutely have to have a residential requirement for your programs. Everybody should be totally treated differently based off their clinical presentation, in town and out of town.
May I ask what you're calling an agency?
Anybody
Are you calling a food bank an agency?
Yes, food bank, Mobile Loaves and Fishes, Habitat for Humanity, Friends, your police outreach, your fire department outreach, your fire department encampment abatement, any agency who touches a person. So it's probably wider than most people think is a nonprofit, but you have a lot of fingers, the police department, Officer Briggs on your side, he knows everybody. I mean, the guy's a walking encyclopedia. He knows everybody and their story and such. So he's an agency, that outreach, your fire department, the abatements you're doing in the encampments are that. So that's what I mean by agency.
Are the agencies signed in to changes? Are they on board with this and realize what we've been doing doesn't work?
I think that they are. I've had a lot of conversations with them. They have seen the data. It was a jagged pill to swallow. It really was. And it took them a little while to catch their breath after they saw it. But they are the ones that I have been speaking with are very on board for making changes, because ultimately they want to help people better themselves.
What they really want to do is work themselves out of a job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In some ways.
This is unrelated to this specifically, but a curiosity, what other type of consulting do you do? Your firm?
Okay.
Curious.
Yeah, I've been a consultant since 1983. And all I've done is homeless since 2005. And I've been to almost 1,500 locations in the United States. I've worked in all 50 states. I was the homeless czar for President Trump. And then Biden kept me for a little bit. So I worked in the first Bush administration, the father, as I did his homeless stuff for the White House. So I've done 3 tours in the White House, and a weird I'm not here to sort of
No.
complain, but you asked.
I did.
I've been contracted with more communities than anybody else in America on issues of homelessness.
And Nancy found you.
Yeah, and I live, and it, for me, it's so nice to actually drive to the city, because I live in San Antonio. Normally, I'm flying all over America, so it's so nice to, and my brother lives here, and he's lived here for 30 years. I had a nephew at Hood for 5 years, so I've been coming up here for about 30 years, so it's for me, it's really nice to,
You're one of the out-of-towners.
yeah, I know, I'm not out of towner, but, so,
He's got a brother here.
no.
Oh, yeah, true.
Can we go back to that slide that showed the out-of-towners versus the in-towners?
Okay. You, or do you want this one here?
I think, no, go back. Anna.
This one?
No, what, but maybe, I can't read that fast. What I'm getting at is whenever, Nancy and I had lunch with you, one thing that you said was, you talked about how difficult it is to rehab an out-of-towner.
Yes.
And so one of the first goals or building block, maybe, I don't know, is to see if you can find those out-of-towners where their home is, where they have emotional connections, and possibly get them out, where they have a chance to recover at home.
This is not inhumane. It's the most humane thing you can do is to get people home.
But
That's where the highest success of success will be, wherever home is.
so of our 500 or so homeless in Temple, how many of those are out-of-towners?
Probably, real quick guess, including all the groups, probably about 300.
Yeah, 60%.
Yeah, 60%.
Yeah.
So, so you're gonna have to break it into three pieces. You're gonna have to break all brand new people have to be complete different clinical track. And the cool news was when this agencies, we've done 3 or 4 of these out in the very 3-hour workshop type. And at first it was like a jagged pill. I mean, or, chewing glass. And then it was like, wow. And then they started checking their numbers, and then they started coming back and it's, you're right, that's what our numbers look like. And so you have to have one clinical track of brand new people. You got to treat people differently from the day one. You don't give them a 30-day box of food from the food bank. That's what goes on now. You give a 3-day box from the food bank, and we do everything to get you back home. So that's one. And then everybody is 0 to 2 years that's out of town. You have to work those folks to try to get back. The problem becomes when you've been here 12 years. You may be from out of town, and if you do get a placement, how good will that placement be? Because their real friends are here. So you send them to Oklahoma, get them set up in Oklahoma, work with family, then they come right back. So your longer term people, I think you want to offer to get back home. You want to try that, but you don't want to waste a lot of money just sending people. Rehab therapy won't work. It has to be you have to have somebody on the other end to receive that person if you want that to work. And there'll be some. And when we've done this in a lot of other cities, many times you call up the family and they said, oh, your call is God sent. We've been looking. We hired I can't tell you how many people have said, I've hired a private investigative agency to go find Joey. And we've been looking at San Diego and LA and San Francisco. We didn't know he was in place X. And so then to be honest, there's the other call. Don't send
Joey.
until he returns the gold. And that, and so that's also how some of the phone calls go too. He stole our wedding ring, and until he brings our wedding ring, he's not welcome back in the family. I mean, that's also a call you get. And so, but you got to stop the new people. And if you stop the new people, that'll take 8% off every year. You got to stop that immediately. And we've been talking to the agencies, and I think most of the agencies are getting that. Whether you can say they've all converted, that's probably would be a stretch, but we're having that talk. Now, you said you had a second question.
No, I just asked Nancy. I just wanted to make sure I got a copy.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, likewise, please. Thank you.
And there's a longer version too, but if you'd like, this is about 1/10 of the other ones. So you can send the longer one.
Have you given this presentation to the Bell County Commissioners yet?
No, not yet.
Do you know when that is?
I don't have that on the schedule.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah.
They're not getting this?
They sure.
Oh, yes.
I think we invited them to the public meeting in Parker Heights.
That's a good idea. Let's reach out. And we've already, Clean's already, they've gotten it and I've met with most of the Clean Council. And again, if any of you, I know some of you, sorry, we've tried, once was mine, once was yours. So, we'll get you, we've had, I see you every week, so if we haven't met with you and you want to come by, we can come by and we can go in there's a lot more data. I'm just giving you the sort of the top two big problems. So there's a lot more data if you want to go into it.
Although Belton doesn't recognize they have any homeless, are you going to Belton City Council?
In fact, we're meeting with Sam Listy and Bob Till in the morning, and I was gonna ask them how they wanted to approach their council with that information.
Good. Dan Kirtley would be a good contact. He's on the council.
Dr. Margaret, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And we're going to come back with some very precise recommendations in under 90 days. So you'll have some very actionable items to take. So
Very good.
So thank you all very much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for your work on that.
You bet.
All right, yeah.
Yes, we did.
Nancy, if you meet with the commissioners court, let me know when that's going to be. I'd like to go to that meeting just to watch faces.
Okay, I sure will.
We'll see a reception.
All right, council, we're gonna skip, I think we're gonna skip 2, 3, and 4 for today, and we're gonna move on to item 5, which is to discuss the proposed fiscal year 2023 business plan, including but not limited to the proposed fiscal year 2023 annual budget and certified tax roll. Just for the clicker.
I got it.
Oh.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As all of you know, we filed the budget with some assumptions and estimates. We didn't have the certified tax roll. We received the certified tax roll it was officially certified on July 19th, but we did not get our tax rate calculations until Friday, and then we've still been tweaking on them even today. So I wanted to kind of go over just our calendar and see where we've come from. And tonight on your agenda, you have 4 agenda items. One is to the vote on a proposed tax rate. One is a public hearing on the tax rate, and then first reading of the tax roll and levy, and first reading setting the tax rate. Looking at our certified tax roll, this year it is a little over $8 billion, and that is made up of the reinvestment zone values are $786 million, and I'm reading from the top up, and the free frozen taxable is $779 million, and the remainder is $6.5 billion. So look, zone values, and that shows the growth in each line item. The reinvestment zone values grew almost 29%. If I just look at the total adjusted value, our tax base grew 20.93%. Our average annual increase over the past 10 years has been about 8.22%. And again, you can, for the last 4 years, we've had some pretty significant growth. I always like to look at the composition of the tax base and market value. 51% of it is single family. A little over 30% is commercial, industrial, utilities. We have a little bit, or 8% of totally exempt. 6.7% multifamily, and 3.79% land and lots. Again, that's based on market value, not taxable value. 11.5 billion. This slide is, like to look at the new value that's added each year. And as you can see, this year we had 306 million of new value. In FY22, we had 357 million. But I want to show later, I have a chart that shows in 22, a big portion of that was totally exempt property. Looking at the new value of this year, almost 86, a little over 86% of it is single family, multifamily. Where we're seeing the big growth numbers. Land and lot, 6.76, and commercial industrial, 5.57. Historically, I like to look out of the total new value, and this is looking at single family, what percent that single family made up of new value. You can see that, again, this past year, a big percent is single family compared to previous years. This chart shows multifamily, again, a big jump there. This is commercial industrial. Land and land lots. So it looks like our inventory is going down here. Brian back here, you can vouch for all of this, right? And then this is just, as I told you, the total exempt property. There was over 91.8 million of that last year in new improvements. And that could be schools, churches, etc. And just, again, just to present the combined total. And that is what I have to go over with just the tax base. I don't know if you want to go over the tax rate, some of that now, or wait to the meeting tonight.
I think we should.
Okay.
Yeah, that might generate some questions that just talk more, openly about it.
Okay, Kelly, can you, I think that might just be in the council meeting folder.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am. Here's the same calendar. We talk about the budget and tax rate adoption process. It's governed by state law, truth in taxation, and the city charter. What we have, the proposed tax rate that was included on this meeting notice is 6.6235. That's the same rate that was filed with the budget. And our rate calculations, our no new revenue tax rate is 0.5227. And that is, I think y'all heard me say this over and over, the rate that it would take to generate the same amount of money this year as last year if you tax the same properties. And it does not look at, it doesn't matter whether, it doesn't care whether it's M&O or INS.
And that's nothing new.
Yeah, right, nothing new. It's just, that's just part of the legislation of a rate they want you to calculate. I do have a sheet that I've gone in and calculated your effective no new revenue M&O rate to show that, what that looks like. And then we have the voter approval rate, which is the rate, you can't go above that rate without getting voter approval. And that includes some unused increment from the past 2 years that when you adopted the rate, it was below that rate, and you get to carry that forward.
Without voter approval. Right, just legislatively.
Again, what is in your packet is the rate of 62.35 cents. The M&O is 29.68 cents. And the debt service INS is 32.67, with a total decrease compared to last year of 1.65 cents. I wanted to kind of show what does this rate mean to homeowners, and Brandon went through and done some case studies. Do you want to go over this now?
Sure, I just thought it would be helpful to look at some actual houses in Temple and what the 62.35 cent rate would look like. So I picked several random houses. This first one though is just based on the averages. So if you take all of the data and you average it out, that's what it looks like. So the market value in tax year 2021, which is our fiscal year 2022, was 192,446. This year, the average was 253,392. But correspondingly, we have an increase in the homestead exemptions. And just as a reminder to council, we really have two homestead exemptions. First, or three actually. First is the exemption or the cap, the appraisal cap. So if your appraised value cannot exceed 10% increase on your homestead. And then in addition, the city of Temple offers a 20% homestead exemption. So 20% of the value is taken off the market value to generate the taxable value. And then over 65 also have the tax freeze, which is the third homestead exemption. So last year, the tax rate, or this year that we're in right now, the tax rate is 64 cents. So the average homeowner based on this data would pay $947 per year in city taxes based on a tax rate of 62.35 cents, which is the rate that was filed with the budget. The average and the average taxable value, that number would be $1,013, which is a difference of $66 a year. But so those are the averages. Tracy, could you go to the next slide?
Yes.
It just really depends. Each home is different based on what the value was and how much, what percentage the appraised value of your home went up. So this home is a home on Stonehaven. You can see that the market value increased by 20%, but because of the homestead exemptions, the taxable value only increased by 5%. So this particular taxpayer would only pay an additional $19 per year in city taxes if you adopted the 62.35 cent tax rate. Next slide,
How was
please.
that homestead exemption to almost double year to year?
The market value is, so the market value is uncapped. So it goes up to whatever the appraisal district finds is the appropriate market value. But the assessed value cannot increase more than 10% from the last year. And then in addition, this homeowner, because it's their homestead, they would get, the taxable value is only applied to 80% of the assessed value.
So that includes part of your cap and your homestead exemption.
That's correct.
And that's a city of Temple policy.
The 10% is a state law, and 20% is a locally adopted benefit, that you have established. And this also doesn't include the discounts that are in our charter. If you pay, I think by October, you get a 3%, November 2%, and December 1% discount. That's another benefit. Next slide, please. So this is a home on Wickersham. You can see the market value of this particular home increased 19% this year. But this particular home owner would pay an additional $66 in City of Temple tax. Their taxable value went up 7%. Next slide, please. This is a home on South 31st Street. While their market value went up 40%, their taxable value only went up 3%. So they would essentially pay $1 more per year in city taxes if you adopted the 62.35. Next slide, please. This is a home on Clover Lane, a 17% market value increase, 7% taxable value. This particular homeowner would pay $114 additional in city taxes based on that tax rate. And next slide, please. North 9th Street, a 27% market value increase, 6% taxable value increase. So this particular homeowner would pay $36 in additional taxes if you adopted the 62.35 cent rate. And I think I might just have one more. White Rock Drive, a 27% market value increase, a 6% taxable value increase for a total $86 tax impact for this particular homeowner.
And with all of this, this is the rate that if adopted, it would require in the motion that you're effectively raising the tax by 19.28% or the rate.
But you see how that really impacts homeowners is in that 0 to, I think the highest one was 7%. Truth in taxation.
Yeah.
That was a very helpful slide.
And you had fun randomly going through Bellcat last night and selecting how
And picking suckers.
someone might lip on with sham. Just saying.
Don't like that game.
I don't know.
You didn't protest?
I didn't.
This is just a chart to show you our historical rate, total rate in the bars. The red line is your INS rate. And that, again, I point out where you see in 2015 to 2016, there was a nickel increase that had to do with the Parks GO bond. Again, the plan to stabilize and minimize the rate impact as we are doing a very robust capital improvement program. And then the blue line is the M&O rate. So, we went through all of that. And I wanted to kind of walk you through that spreadsheet that I laid out in front of you if you like. No, but I can look on my. Thank you. Can you get the lights? They hold their eyes. There. This, put this spreadsheet together. If I could take you down to at the bottom section where it says option. And we look at the same tax rate as, same rate as the filed budget. And that is the 62.35 cent rate. We show the revenue generated, the tax rate increase or decrease, which is a 1.65 cents. And then there is a revenue generated from that. And then it shows the percent greater than the no new revenue rate. And then I also show the rate, the percent of just comparing it to the M&O only, no new revenue rate. That's where it gets real confusing. But it's just the different percentages. And I just listed several scenarios of a rate and then what that would look like. Scenario 4. I don't know if you want to mention that one, Brian. The one highlighted.
Yeah, you mean, scenario, sorry.
So this is a rate that would generate just a little over $1.1 million in additional revenue in the general fund. And we've identified several cost estimate updates, a few corrections, and a few priorities that we would like to consider moving forward into FY23 that were originally in FY24 filed budget. So that's the rate that would allow us to do those changes.
And I also wanted to point out too, tonight, the rate that you can, if you did the 62.35, you could come down from that, but you couldn't go above it without resetting dates. And just for tonight's meeting, and Janet, correct me if I'm wrong, item number 5 is just the proposal. You're recommending a proposal to adopt a tax rate, not adopt it. And that motion, it would be a motion to place a proposal to adopt a tax rate of XXX, which if it was 0.6235 cents on August 18, 2022. But then on August 18th, whatever rate you adopt is when you also have to, in your motion, include the percentage.
But tonight, we don't include a percentage.
You're just, and you can come down from that
Right.
between now and August 18th.
Can't go up.
Can't go up.
So you can, if you already know which rate you would like to land at, you could certainly have that rate in your motion tonight. Or if you want to maintain flexibility, maximum flexibility while you digest this information, we would then recommend you set the 62.35, and then you could either stay there or bring it down as appropriate on the final reading on the 18th.
Then the adjustment to the rate is to the M&O, not the INF. Anything going down.
So to be sure I understand this correctly, if we say the 62.65, because of the new
35.
valuation, 35, I beg your pardon. Because of the final valuation, it would produce $1,817,000 more than revenue than we initially budgeted.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
That's great.
And so if you come down to the 6130 rate, it generates $1,134,000 in additional revenue because of the valuation. And that sort of fits a bucket of projects you'd like to see in the budget if we could.
Yes, sir.
Right.
But yes,
But we are coming down from last year. Already.
but
Yes.
item 1 gives us or option 1 gives the most flexibility between now and the 18th, obviously.
That's
Oh,
great.
yeah, I think you stay with one now. We think about it and decide what we want to do on the 18th.
I couldn't agree more.
I think that's wise. I know this has been a lot of information in a short amount of time. But Tracy and her team obviously have done a great job in getting this, and we just, it just takes the time that it takes the appraisal district to get it to us, and so we want you to have as much time as you need to digest. So I personally would recommend you do 62.35 tonight, and then that gives you the opportunity to study this more and make a final decision on it.
Council, anything else? Oh, very good. So I spoke to Kathy, she said she thought she needed about 10 or 15 minutes for the executive session. I'm gonna try to do 3 or one of these other ones now. How long is cybersecurity training?
38 minutes.
Okay, we won't do that one.
The 10 minutes I gave you, that
Try to go very quickly.
Well, we don't want to cheat you.
I think TMAT is too. I would suggest we go into the executive session and then
That's fine.
that we won't rush for.
and 10 minutes was if we needed to squeeze, like I needed a minimum of that, but I think.
That's 25 minutes of this. It is. I mean, am I right?
Topic, we can stick with 10 minutes.
We don't do that.
I know.
We're over here trying to redesign doors. So, okay, so let's move on to item 6, which is receive a briefing from the city attorney regarding pending leases at the John Miller Central Texas Regional Airport. And pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, the city council will meet in executive session to discuss and receive advice regarding a matter of attorney-client privilege. No final action will be taken, and we are going in at 4:15. Thanks, man.